Well, hello there, and welcome to this edition of the DMZ America podcast. It is actually episode number 94. Ted, we need to work out some special event for the 100th episode, which is coming up quickly. It is Friday, March 24th, 2023. I'm Scott Stans, coming to you A, from Dallas, Texas, and B, from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall, coming to you A, from New York City, and as usual, and B, from the left.
Your name came up. I'm here talking to some new clients here at the Dallas Morning News, and your name came up. He's a follower of yours. It was interesting.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was very interesting.
So wait, this is kind of the euphemism in cartooning when someone says like, "Oh, your name came up," and they'll say like, "Oh, I'm familiar with his work. I know his work," as opposed to "I like his work." Did he like my work, or did he just know my work?
He knew your work, and he said it really
Mm-hmm.
blows my. I mean, he really takes no prisoners. I go, no, he doesn't. He really
Okay,
doesn't.
I guess that's bad. Whatever.
No, it's great. I think that's exactly what an editorial cartoonist should do, don't you? I mean, it strikes me.
Yes, but it's what he thinks. It's what guys like him think that matters.
Does it though?
Well, it matters to my landlord.
Oh yeah, that's
Quite a
right.
lot.
You still pay your rent with money, don't you?
Being balls out is not really quite enough. It's like, oh, I use stud coin, like I'm not really.
Coin.
But you understand, my cartoons are very like hard rocking. I mean,
Yeah,
like
you're punk rock.
I'm kicking major ass. It's like,
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that modern journalism, modern opinion journalism still clings to the idea of softening the blow, being moderate, being measured, and as cartoonists,
and therefore lame. And that's how, through careful husbandry, American journalism has gotten to the profitable point that they are.
yes, the colossuses that it is amongst ants.
Why? Like, certainly, why would they try to do anything different? They who are doing so well.
Yeah, no, it's very strange, and you and I have our obvious opinions on this, but there was a lovely visit, and the Dallas Morning News is a lovely publication. God bless them for running my cartoons, and they're running a fairly harsh one.
Yes, indeed.
A fairly heavy hitting one this weekend, so I'm kind of happy about that. Anyway, so on to the podcast and the topics at hand. It was a Senate hearing yesterday on the evils and the burgeoning threat that is TikTok.
It's funny. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that was as far as I was. I mean, I think we're both going to kind of have the same opinion on this, which is, that the fear now is many governors, for instance, across the country, have issued edicts that the state devices do not have TikTok on them. The fear is that China will be mining the information that is mined from TikTok. So the CEO of TikTok, is that the right title? Yes. Was grilled yesterday by our fearless representatives in the upper house of our Congress. I mean, of all the threats, we just had a bunch of school shootings, right? We just had, more. I mean, it doesn't even make the first. Oh God, this is quaint. The first 20 pages of the newspaper, assuming you've seen a newspaper.
Well, there only are 20 pages of a newspaper.
So yeah, it's just under the jumble now. But this is where they want to put all their attention and energies and monies. Seriously, Ted, is this a threat at all?
Well, the short answer is no. I wanted to talk about a little bit about also, how this is. I had a flashback to the PMRC hearings with Frank Zappa and all in the 1980s, because it really did seem very similar. I mean, it's kind of like Congress, obviously being old and out of touch and white and male, is acting really old and out of touch and white and male when they were, back in the 80s, although it was Tipper Gore, the most notorious one, that they were going after, the evils of punk and metal and hip hop, or rap as it was called then. It just was ludicrous. And the only person who came out of it looking good was Frank Zappa. because he so carefully deconstructed and ridiculed them with his incredible incisive intelligence, and which was also not hard to do compared to who he was talking to. But I mean, I just think that but in terms of the threats that are being posited here, right? So the threats are, and I was kind of like really listening carefully to members of Congress who are, this is a bipartisan stupidity, by the way. So it is there is hope, because I know, Scott, it irks you that the two parties can't get together to work on anything, but on this matter, on TikTok, idiocy has created bipartisanship, and so. But no, there's no threat, because here's the thing: why would China lean on a Chinese-owned social media company to scrape data that it already has? That it already, I mean, China is the world's largest country. They have a giant intelligence apparatus. They have satellites. They do the same stuff that the NSA does. They can scrape all of our data from the dark web. They can buy it from Facebook. The privacy train is gone, right? So there's absolutely anybody who thinks that like your personal, even your social security numbers, your work history, your bank account numbers, all that stuff is for sale. The Chinese and anybody else with the money, they have that stuff already. So they couldn't get anything from TikTok that they couldn't already get easier elsewhere. So that's why it's no threat. And then the idea that the Chinese Communist Party, which is communist only in name only, right? Yeah. I mean, it's just, I mean, China is a very
awesome graphics.
Country. Yeah, no, the graphics are awesome. Yeah, China is a capitalist country with awesome banners and propaganda posters, but that's it. And I say that with great regret as a commie myself. But the threat that the CCP is going to use TikTok to propagandize our poor innocent children. I talked to my son, who's almost 19, about this morning. What do you think about TikTok? He said it should be banned. And he didn't know why Congress wanted to ban it, because of this propaganda Red Scare type stuff. And I told him, and he was like, no, it should be banned because it makes people stupid, and because it's addictive and it makes people feel bad about themselves. So really they should ban it because of the social good that it would do. And I'm like, he's right, but that's not what this is about. This isn't about those things. I mean, so you could ban Instagram too at the same rate. I mean, just on a lot of grounds. So no, TikTok, let's put it this way. If TikTok is a threat, Congress has not articulated, no one has articulated any credible way in which it really is a threat. If they know something real, they're not saying what it is. So since they're unwilling to say what it is, I'm going to have to assume they're not a threat. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, I mean, and all the other social media stuff, when you and I have talked about it at some depth on this podcast before, that the threat is not necessarily the mining of personal information. It's that it just makes you an idiot. And we've been subjects of discussion on various social media platforms, and it's galling. And it's downright idiotic. There's no other way to put it. You and I have talked that if we could go back in time and smother social media in its crib, we would do it, because it has not done any good for anybody ever. And so,
nope. I mean, it has a 1% good. I mean, like, for example, Tara Reid, who claims that Joe Biden raped her in a Senate stairwell. Basically, he claims that he fingered her. She claims that he fingered her. Her story is only alive because of social media. When the LA Times smeared me, I was only able to garner support and get my side of the narrative out due to social media. So for things like that, it's amazing. It's a democratizing thing, but the price you pay is high. But the point is, if we were going to start banning social media, it's a bad look to start for a country that once had a law called the Chinese Exclusion Act to start with a Chinese-owned company. I mean, it's like, is it inherently xenophobic? No. Does it look xenophobic? Yes. And
I did want talk about that and kind of expand the conversation to the threat of China. We've touched on it in this podcast. We probably need to dedicate a segment to this, but let's just touch on it
Yeah.
again. And I've been thinking a lot about it because you and I disagree that what the kind of threat that we don't disagree that the kind of threat China is it a military threat? There may be some elements of that, but they've never been that expansionist, although they certainly are in the South China Sea right now.
Never. They've never been. I mean, look, compared to any great power, compared to like, I mean, think about, for example, ancient Persia. They spread across the Asian continent all the way to modern day Tajikistan. Think about the Mongols. They spread all the way to Eastern Europe. Think about the British Empire. The sun never set upon it. Think about the United States invades countries literally on the opposite side of the planet, like Vietnam. I mean, China has had barely, they've had some military incursions, Vietnam, half-hearted invasion. They had, there's the Tibet thing, but Tibet was always a vassal state. They've never really, they're not an expansionist military power. That's just not their bag in 5,000 years. And it's not going to change. I don't think that's their thing. They, even with Taiwan, I mean, they would have a credible argument to say it's part of theirs. Hell, we think it's part of theirs. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those silly arguments, but
I mean, I don't like the word threat, Scott. I got to say, I think China is a rival. It is a rival, just like Brazil is a rival. It's an economic and political rival. We are competing in the marketplace of ideas and in the financial marketplace for market share, political influence, cultural influence, and so on. And so, if we view that as a threat, we're going to lose this challenge, because this isn't like a death match. This is really a race, and the race is going to be won by the country that is smart and understands the situation. Us viewing it as a threat is going to make us lose.
Well, I think it's an economic threat. And like you say, you can call it a rivalry, but rivalries can be threatening. And you're right about firstly and foremost about the ability of the Chinese to outthink us, and they certainly are. They're much more agile now, and they're becoming much more of a world power than they ever have been in ways that are unexpected. Brokering the peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran recently.
They have a space program. How many Americans know that?
Well, I do, because I'm a space geek, but the thing is, they don't broadcast it very well, but they have their own, there's a Chinese space station. They've actually landed a rover on the far side of the moon. They've had numerous successes, and the chances of them putting a human on the moon, which we have not bothered to do for 50 plus years, and Mars. I mean, I suspect
they could do it within the next 2 years.
Yeah. The man on the moon. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's their plan. And so the thing is, I think, look, you got to look at what the Chinese are doing to spread their influence. And what's frustrating to me as an American is that we're kvetching about something that we could do ourselves easily, more easily than the Chinese. And we're choosing not to do it. Look, they're winning by basically renting and buying hearts and minds all over the world, right? I mean, like I saw when I was in Tajikistan, which borders China, many years ago, all the buses in Dushanbe, the capital, had Chinese flags painted on the side, and they all said in Chinese and in Tajik, "Gift of your brothers in the People's Republic of China." When I drove on roads that were newly being paved for the first time since the Soviet collapse, there were Chinese flags on the signs that said, like, "This road is a gift from your benevolent brothers in the People's Republic of China." They were building the first railroads ever to have been constructed in Tajikistan. Again, no IMF style loan, just, we just like you here. And obviously, and you know what it is it's sort of like, look, they do a lot of things. So they have different arrangements with other countries. Sometimes they are loans, and sometimes they do behave very much like the IMF, in that it's only Chinese workers who build these things, and it causes resentment from the locals. But basically, look, it's a different arrangement. When the U.S. spreads influence, it's either at the point of a gun, like, do what we say or else, as we're trying to do in Cuba with sanctions, or it's corruption. Like, we side with like Saddam Hussein in the 1980s, or against Iran, or we side with some, like, the dictator of Saudi Arabia, the crown prince Mohammed bin Salman, and so we're on the wrong side of history. The Chinese don't do that. The Chinese are like, well, we don't really care who's running your country. That's up to you. We're not trying to do any regime change. We just want whoever's running your country. When we call, it's like the Godfather, like, this day may never come, but someday your Chinese godfather in Beijing may call and might need a favor. And we would hope that you would be there, ready to give us that favor. That's their shtick, and it works. And
Yeah, but let me ask
we
you,
used to be that country in the 1970s. Like, when we were kids, Scott, we remember like famine in Africa, and like all the bags of food labeled "gift of the people of the United States" with the American flag on it, being like being delivered to famine zones. That's not us anymore. That's not our optics. Our optics is the invasion of Iraq. Our optics are Guantanamo, and Abu Ghraib. Our optics are extraordinary rendition. Our optics are now supporting the sketchy government of Ukraine. We don't have good optics anymore.
no, but we do. But just to backtrack a little bit, we do still offer a massive amount of humanitarian aid around the world, especially when there's catastrophes, earthquakes, volcanoes, whatever.
I wouldn't say massive, but okay.
Oh no, it's massive. It's in the billions of dollars. The other question I have, and this is one, and this may be too big for this, as we wrap this up, but economic competition and economic threat, and they are an economic threat. I would use that phrase.
Wait, an economic threat? How are they? How is the U.S. economy specifically imperiled by China?
By their incursion into in competition into other markets, and against American goods and American services. And I think
by competing against Chinese goods? But I mean, what Chinese car have you bought lately, Scott? I mean, what exactly?
Aren't there? There are some that are built there. I mean, there's some American companies that have or would think. I'm trying to.
But I mean, seriously, I mean, what exactly? What market share are they stealing from us in any kind of substantial way?
What's a growing way? I would probably argue that in electronics, I would definitely say in manufacturing of raw materials, steels, and other things, that they're definitely a competitor.
But we don't do those things anymore. We gave those up.
Well, we like to think we do.
Hello, Pennsylvania. We're looking at you.
I guess my point is this: is an economic challenge, an economic threat, the same as a political or military threat? And I think that you could make a case for that. People were talking about during like Iraq or our incursions in the Middle East. Oh, this is just a war. We're going to war over oil. And I think it was P.J. O'Rourke who said that's as good a reason. That's probably a better reason than most that we've had recently, because
although that never really made any sense, because oil prices it's not like we got a discount. We would get a discount on oil prices for invading a Middle Eastern country. Everybody pays the same price for oil, right? So like if you're in France and you don't want to have anything to do with the US invasion of Iraq, no problem. You pay the same oil prices as everyone else. Not to mention oil prices actually went up as a result of the instability created by the invasion.
Right. But my point is that, is an economic threat or a perceived threat enough of a reason to confront and conflate conflict? China is being they're the new Soviet Union. When you mentioned you and I growing up, the Soviet Union was this looming threat over all the world's.
That's what we were told by Republicans, but
this is
not
what
true.
we're told about China, and it's both sides. It's Democrats and Republicans. We're pouncing on the CEO of TikTok.
True.
to make
true,
their
but
point
it's
that,
not. It's not true now. It wasn't true then, and it's not true now. The
well,
Chinese just the Russians just wanted to be left alone,
that's not
and
true.
and they
That's
were
not
way
true.
behind
That
us in
is
the arms
not true,
race.
Ted, and you know it's not
They
true.
were way behind us in the arms race.
But the Russians were expansionist. I mean, we talked about the Chinese not being historically expansionist.
They were ideologically expansionist for sure.
Well, I would say
Um,
Hungary, Romania, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia would all disagree with your assessment that they weren't
well,
expansionist.
those countries were all Russia's bitch, as previously discussed on this program. I mean, look, the Monroe Doctrine declares the entire Western Hemisphere to be our bitch. So,
Yeah.
the Russians were taking it easy, really.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
so
Okay.
but like but it's not true. I mean, there's just no evidence to support this. I mean, look, China is more credible as a threat simply because it's richer and more populous than the Soviet Union. But it's certainly not. But there's no evidence that they've made those moves. I know
Well,
you're
and
scared
I think
of
there's a
their islands.
frustration because you touched on what America and how it's the perception, the optics of America as being the helping hand. And I mean, look at where China's active. They're extremely active in Africa, where we don't give two craps. That entire
Yep.
continent, they're all over it, giving
Yep.
ports, like you said, roads, railroads. Latin America, I mean, in Mexico, they're building a port in the Gulf of Cortez. I mean, it's
Yeah, and that should be our zone of influence
oh,
completely.
absolutely, absolutely, and we're not because we don't care. We just don't. But we do care about
No.
TikTok, and that's what's important, kids. Um, Anyway, okay, we're gonna wrap this up and we're gonna come back. We're gonna burning down the house. How do you say that in French, Ted?
Don't brûler la maison, but you wouldn't say burning down. Yeah, you just say brûler la maison.
We shall return. Stick around, kids.